Sixth year. Wow, that's amazing. So we've been doing this for a while. We do this not as a sales thing, not as a real estate thing, but really just to give back, make sure everyone's good, have a safe place and a forum to discuss, tricky mental health topics with
Yeah.
a professional. And it's these monthly mindset sessions are great because I don't think it's intended by any stretch to be a group therapy thing, but not only is it learning based, because she brings a ton of things that she put together and researched, people to start discussing. It kind of goes in the direction that it needs to go in based upon the attendees. And it's amazing. So, super proud to have done this for so long with Heather and all of you guys for participating. So, without further ado, Heather, feel free to take over. I
Yeah.
think let me make you a co host so that you can grab. There we go.
I think Jewel already did, but thank you for making sure. Um, I do think so. First of all, I just want to highlight that you're honoring everyone's safety by moving from in person to Zoom today. I know that we really have immensely enjoyed being in person and just having the energy of the rooms. And I now have the privilege of being able to go out to the couple office as well, which I've loved being able to do that too. So in May, we'll go back to couple A. But I just want to thank you for, in the utmost of caution, moving to Zoom. I know it's a different dynamic when we're all Hollywood squaresing. Um, if you're old enough to get that, I appreciate that. But in March, we actually ended up canceling because you guys were having internet stuff. It was like so dark at my house anyway. So we ended up not being able to do the burnout follow up from February's. So we're actually just going to kind of launch into what we did in March. Chad, I know you may not remember our entire conversation, but did anything stick out to you or anybody who was there? Did anything stick out to you guys about the kind of initial discussions that we had about burnout?
I can't even remember what I had for breakfast, if I'm being
I
honest.
know. I did give you a disclaimer, to be fair. But like when you think about burnout, what do you think about? Like what sticks out to you when somebody says, "Oh, I'm feeling so burnt out"? Like what's the thing that sticks out to you?
The
It could
kind
be
of
anybody,
For
but
me,
for you.
overwhelming that,
overwork.
yeah, or that overwhelming feeling of like, I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, you guys can always use the chat too if you don't want to
Yeah.
interrupt, but please interrupt me. Um, so the interesting thing that we talked about in February that kind of struck a chord, like the energy in the room kind of shifted a little, is burnout is not simply feeling overburdened or overworked. Burnout is a state that you get to in your emotional and physiological and physical self where you are incapacitated. And so when we talk about burnout, and I think we've talked about how we kind of overuse psychology terms in main language, but when you talk about burnout, you have to be really careful because I've written letters for people to be out of work for 3 to 6 months because they're so burnt out that they are actually incapacitated. They cannot do the work that they need to do. They can't show up. They can't feed themselves. They can't find a way to get any sort of physical exercise. They can't engage in the relationships that they have with their families or their partners or children or friends. And so burnout really is an extreme place that you get to when you don't pay attention to the warning signs or you don't have a proactive approach to the idea of wellness. And so we had such a robust discussion in February and people had so many really good questions that I thought, well, let's do a part two. Um, any thoughts on that before I kind of launch in?
I unfortunately wasn't able to make that other one, so this is
Well, we grieved you.
yeah
We
my
grieved you
my
being gone.
my first entree into this. So yeah, I'm interested to
Um,
I think
yeah.
the last one, like the huge theme was like boundaries and then like self accountability.
yeah. So the plan was to do boundaries in April and do this in March, but we'll now do boundaries in May when I go out to couple A, which I think is going to be perfect anyway because all of you guys were having such a robust discussion about it. Um, but it burnout does come from a lack of prioritizing the expectations and boundaries that you have in your personal and professional life. And I think when we talked about burnout, it became a very intentional discussion around how we set expectations for ourselves and other people, how people treat us, how we respond to information. I remember the whole your your boundary is not a request, your boundary is a line in the sand. And so you can't say, I don't accept phone calls before 8 a.m. and then answer your phone because it's a special client at 7:50, or answer your phone because it's Chad at 7:50, right? So I think making it increasing our awareness around what it is to actually set a boundary is going to be really helpful too. And I wanted to talk a little bit today about how we recognize the symptoms in ourselves and the warning signs that we can start to curb, kind of as quickly as possible. So last time we talked about, we live in a time of urgency culture. Everything is important all the time. Everything is, has to be done right now. Everything was due yesterday. And those of us that are high achievers, those of us that have really big goals for ourselves, those of us that feel really strongly about following through on the things that we agree to do or the commitments that we make are at a much higher risk of getting stuck in a loop of satisfying the needs of other people without taking care of our own. And so burnout is not just being tired or exhausted or overwhelmed. It really is like a physiological state of incapacity. And so the first thing we have to do is actually take an honest look at ourselves. What are the warning signs that I get up? What happens to me when I start to feel like I'm, in a state of excessive overwhelm? What are my personal stress patterns? What are the things that I say yes to that I wish I had said no to? Where do I find myself feeling resentful? Where do I find myself avoiding relationships? And then once we take a look at that, trying to kind of bust that cycle that we've gotten into of not paying attention to how we are feeling, only taking into consideration what we're obligated to do. So, got a little paradox when you're a high achiever, and I do have to send props to Alex. She put this together, and I feel like her artistic ability is so much better than mine. So my presentations have gotten much prettier. But when we start to talk about high achieving, and I know all of you fall into this because all of you have really extraordinary expectations of yourself. Where I struggle personally as a human being is I take on way more than I need to. I love being able to meet the needs of other people. I love being able to squeeze one more thing in. And so when I start to feel overwhelmed, it's because I've said yes more than I really needed to. And so my burnout doesn't look like collapse. It looks like at the end of the week on Friday, when I kind of close my computer and I'm getting ready to sort of like start my weekend, I'll go out to the living room and I'll say, my brain hurts. And then my spouse gets kind of like the back end of what's left after I've worked all week, right? And so it does look a lot like high performance, getting it done regardless of how we feel, skipping the gym because we have extra things that we need to do in the morning and we have to start sooner. And so these kind of paradoxical columns are, it looks like always delivering, it looks like always showing up, it looks like saying yes to everything, it looks like being the go-to person, it looks like showing up at 6 a.m. and leaving at 7 p.m. And it really does look like we're never ever missing a beat. But in our body, what's happening is we're running on our stress hormones. We're slowly building this. Can't believe they asked me to do one more thing. I can't believe I have to show up for this one more thing. And then slowly we lose our joy. We lose any sort of like fulfillment or happiness in our day to day. And so we tend to take less lunch breaks that actually focus on eating our food. We tend to drink less water. We tend to stop, giving our dogs an extra scratch for a couple minutes in between our meetings. We start to just like in a kind of soldiery way, just do the thing and then do one more thing and then do one more thing and one more thing. And then we become emotionally numb. And I'm not sure if any of you have experienced this. My guess would be that you have because you are in an extraordinarily high stress environment, regardless of how well you're your boundaries are put together, I do feel like you guys work in a kind of high anxiety system. It does look like this isn't as hard as other people. I have it way better. I'm recognizing my privilege. Other people have it so much worse. I can't slow down. I'll slow down next week, or I'll rest after we go on vacation, or maybe I'll plan a vacation next month if I can just get through this month. And so really what starts to happen is we keep promising ourselves that we're going to do something differently, and 6 months down the road we haven't. Familiar to anyone? All of you are smiling and nodding. I do in some ways. Like when I sit down for my one-on-ones with my therapy clients, I do at times feel a little bit hypocritical because I fall into this all the time, right? Like being a helper or being an empath, or liking being the person that shows up for other people, it shows up this way, right? Like, oh, it's fine. I'll just do one more. Oh yeah, of course I can squeeze in. Of course I can be flexible. And I think every once in a while I just have to remind myself, like, it's okay to say I don't have any flexibility this week, or it's okay to say I can't move this appointment, or it's okay to say, it's going to have to be next month, or it's going to have to be the month after. So starting to really look at not just how quickly we respond to people, but how often we're defaulting to what the other person is asking for instead of really looking at whether or not it's something we can do or we are able to do. Thoughts?
Not saying no and saying and overly using yes absolutely resonates with me. I get
Yeah.
stuck in so many projects and things as a result of that.
Yeah.
I feel too, like as time progresses, for me, in like kind of my mantra of kind of go with the flow, and like for lack of a better term, I'm like entering the zone of like really giving far fewer fucks than I did earlier in my life. That I feel it's been a while since I've felt burnout, and I'm wondering if like I'm just kind of like I had like I had two big burnout situations way long time ago. I
Yeah.
felt like, and then like those were lesson learned, and I'm like, there's no freaking way I'm gonna get myself in that same in either of those situations again. So maybe
Yeah.
like you kind of build defenses up, or spidey sense to like avoid the precursors of what may happen. And also it's kind of giving up that like, oh well, whatever happens happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Control has been a big theme for a lot of folks that I work with and myself, right? Because control in an odd way, like it gives us the idea that we are actually in control when there's a lot of things that we aren't in control of. And Alan, you sort of lived the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, like in
Yeah.
your burnout
Mhm.
experience, right? Like, okay, so maybe this is about wanting to grow in my career. Maybe this is about getting, experience. Maybe this is about showing up,
Yeah.
for a while so that I can move forward in I don't know if it was career or personal or what, but
Yeah.
the second one, I wonder if you just looked at yourself in the mirror and went, okay, this isn't working and this isn't what I want.
Yeah. And it's kind of like that self-care too thing, because as I look at it is, the two that I went through were more, business career related.
Mhm.
And I think the core thing was like, it was really affecting other people's lives. And if I had, you know, if,
Yeah.
if I can just put forth like a little bit extra effort, that's not too much on me, but it could have a more major impact, so it's kind of, I don't know if I was self guilt tripping myself to, to like keep persevering, because
Mhm.
one of my other mantras in life is like, if there's a will, there's a way, and I'm going to put the will in here and I will find the
Yeah.
way, and then,
Right.
it accumulates. And then you're like, well, the realization kind of came to me is like, I'm not going to help anyone, if this kind of continues, and like potentially detrimental to myself.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the mind switch for me.
Yeah. Locally, we've been having a lot of conversations around caring for our aging parents and also caring for our families and how we stretch to have enough time in the day to be able
Yeah.
to fulfill all of those things that don't necessarily feel like obligations, right? They feel like things we want to do. They
Hmm.
feel like things that we're excited to do and that, we want to provide for other people. And then the other thing to acknowledge is maybe 10 years ago, being a high achiever wasn't quite as stressful because now we have a totally different like political atmosphere, our internet presence and our immediacy of information is so much more. And so we're living in a really different time even than 10 years ago. So the amount of work that I did 10 years ago, I I could never do it now. Like I could never work
Hmm.
those kind of 60, 70-hour weeks that I was doing at the nonprofit plus doing private practice and all that kind of stuff because there's just way too much information coming at my brain all the time, no matter what boundaries I set in place, it feels like, right? So we want to stay informed, we want to stay aware, we want to be able to pay attention to what's happening in the world, we want to be able to pay attention to what's happening with our families, and then all of a sudden somebody's like, well, you got to pay attention to what's happening with you. And you're like, what do you mean?
Yeah, I think that's like another huge downfall of like not necessarily just being that yes person, but
Mhm.
constantly like in fight or flight mode, right? Or like looking at what the worldly expectations are of you that, you're putting in your mind, oh, I have to be this, I have to do this, and not like actually stepping back and like reflecting of what you need. And then I think last time you were talking about urgency, right? Of
Yeah.
is this actually urgent? Like, do I actually need to do this to accomplish this? And so, yeah, I think like the other downfall is just all of the worldly aspects. And then, yeah, just the fight or flight of FOMO too, fear of missing out, right? And being irrelevant and all of that really gets to you at the end of the day.
Yeah. I spent a long time working with my mentor on the difference between being relevant and being reverent. And relevance is something that you chase, reverence is something that you earn. That's something that comes to you. I don't know if you guys have ever been surprised by when you get like a random phone call or random email of somebody like bestowing something upon you. Something like, hey, we want to like in my example, it would be like, hey, we heard that you are in a retainer relationship with this agency and they love what you're doing. We really would like to sign on with you too. And it's not something that like I sought out or something that like I pitched or asked for, but somebody that came to me and said, I think this would be a really good fit. And that is such a like strong example of the difference between trying to be relevant and trying to remain reverent. And I spent a lot of time sitting with that concept because urgency dictates that I have to answer all of the things right away, but not everything is urgent, right? And so often in working with folks who deal with severe and persistent mental illness, those folks that are houseless, those folks that are struggling to access the care that they need, everything feels urgent because it is, because their safety is at play. But in other spaces, the things that we think are urgent really just, they usually aren't. So it does lead to a lot of these kind of burnout symptoms and some of that comparison and impostery type stuff too. Um, to give you guys an idea of how burnout sort of builds in your system, we broke it down into um, your physical body, your emotional self, the brain, and then kind of your outward behaviors. And so, again, props to Alex. She broke this down so well. Like, do you know yourself? Do you know what the actual signs are of starting to break down? Um, a big one for me is I won't be able to fall asleep. I'll sleep fine, but I won't be able to fall asleep because my brain is just going 45 miles an hour. I do tend to get some of that fatiguey stuff where I'm like, I slept 8 hours. Like, why am I feeling tired? Emotionally, we tend to be more reactive. We'll have flat affect, which is kind of the inability to demonstrate or display emotion, even if you're feeling it. Um, Not wanting to do the things that you usually love to do, not being able to express emotion through tears, not being able to um, adequately explain how we're feeling to someone else, not being able to sort of capture how we're feeling, any sort of difficulty concentrating on work that we're doing, forgetting to pick our kid up at school in its early day, like the things that just normally we would be really on top of, they start to kind of break down in our system. And these things all, I hate to, I hate to be a downer, but like these things all start to impact and influence each other, and they just become bigger and bigger and bigger. You don't tend to have one of these things, you tend to have something in all of them. Um, I think too, the weather isn't super helpful sometimes, right? When we're in a like weather system like this, where we're fearful for our neighbors and worried about flooding and we don't quite know what's happening, our baseline of anxiety is much higher than it would be when it's sunny and 80 and everybody's kind of in a really like happy go lucky mood. Um, any particular warning signs that are super obvious for you guys that when they start to happen, you're like, oh, I gotta like take a beat.
Based on these symptoms, I might have been in burnout since I was a year and a half. They're all every single one of these are far too familiar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for me, I'm a pretty positive person. And when negative thoughts enter my mind and I'm starting to prime to look for the negativity in the situation, that's kind of a sign of like, oh, you got to change something.
That kind of difficulty accessing your usual temperament or your usual perspective. Um, Often people will talk about how when they wake up in the morning, they're less excited to do the thing that they're supposed to do that day, whether it's work or personal. They wake up and they're like, "Oh, I have to," instead of today's the day of, running around and going to baseball with my kids, or, you know, I we love errand dates in our house. So like going to the grocery store becomes more fun because we would just make a date out of it. And I'll wake up and be like, oh, we have to run to like five different places. And Tommy's over there like celebrating and, playing his kazoo. And so I feel like, babe, we're doing fun stuff today. We're running errands. And so that's sometimes early warning for me too, is that shift in perspective.
Yeah, like things like life becomes chore, right? Like, oh,
Yes.
brush my teeth. I got to brush my hair,
Ugh.
and it's like, oh, am I burnout or am I borderline like slipping into depression here? So,
Or am I neurodivergent? I mean, maybe it's ADHD. Who knows, right? You just never know. Um, the other one too that a lot of people kind of miss is low grade sickness. That when you're overwhelmed or you're overworked, you don't feel great, but you don't feel like you're sick enough to like go to bed and watch TV all day. You're like, oh man, I just like my muscles kind of hurt and I don't really have an appetite, but like you're not sick enough. This is, I think, in my, I'm going to take my therapist hat off, but like when I was growing up, I was a bootstrap kid, right? My parents were like, you're fine, you don't have a fever, rub some dirt on it, you need to go to school. I wasn't really given a whole lot of opportunity to be like soft and gentle with myself. And so I kind of learned that I needed to feel guilty calling in sick when in actuality, the times I've called in sick has been like kind of rare. So I think some of it has to do with childhood trauma too. Any other
hear you.
telltale signs? Yeah, right. I don't know how old you are, and I won't guess or make you say, but
Old enough.
like children of the 80s, we all have little neurodivergence and a little bit of trauma.
It's normal, right?
So normal. It is too, it's interesting too. Like we could do a whole training on this too, but like this wave of like really tough parenting into gentle parenting, and then sort of like the pendulum swinging and trying to figure out like how we get to the middle of that. Like, oh shoot, we went a little too far. Now we need to come back to the middle, but we don't want to go too far to it's such an interesting thing to watch patterns over time as you get older. Okay. This one might hit you a little harder than I intended. But here's how you can tell if you are tired or if you are out of alignment. If you are tired, a small repair will generally put you back into alignment. So, like one really good night's sleep, a really good date with a friend or your partner. You feel restored after you rest. Like maybe you take a nap and you wake up and you're like, oh wow, I feel I feel pretty good. The third one, you're depleted from the output as opposed to depleted from conflict. Conflict tends to send us into out of alignment because something isn't resonating and we can't like come to a good conclusion. Like if you have an ongoing conflict with a friend or a peer or, you know, a supervisor at work, when you're tired, you're depleted simply from doing the things that you're doing as opposed to being depleted from ongoing conflict, which can then kind of send you out of alignment. Uh, Going on vacation helps and you don't get sick on vacation. I don't know if any of you have experienced that when you finally go on vacation and then you wake up the first day and all of a sudden you have the flu because your body's like, oh, I get to rest now. So I'm going to deal with some sickness. Um, and then you also feel excited when you come back, right? So if you're tired on a Friday and by the time Sunday night rolls around, you're like excited to go back to work or excited to do the things that you do in your kind of regular day to day, that's usually a tired thing. This tiredness is what we call a resource issue. So when we feel tired and the repair feels simple and the repair is effective, it's generally a resources thing. Like I agreed to do one too many things, I put myself out there one too many relationships, XYZ. When we're out of alignment, this is when you wake up and you immediately feel that sense of dread. You feel like something is kind of foundationally off in your day to day. You feel like your work, your relationships are out of alignment with your values, that you're not able to live the values that you strongly like hold and are intentional about. Um, Vacation, you either get sick or it just like puts a little pause on your feelings of dissatisfaction with your life. And so when we understand the difference between being tired and being out of alignment with our set of core values, we can start to address the things that are causing us to stay out of alignment. Um, Sometimes I think my stories help you guys, and sometimes I think you're like, okay, Heather, quit telling your stories. But I didn't realize I was out of alignment in my nonprofit job until about a year or two late. And then I decided to give a 6 month notice in that position. And so I basically lived out of alignment for almost 18 months. And it took me a couple of years to really recover from rest being restful, not waking up in a panic, not feeling like I was missing something. And so being out of alignment really is a very serious symptom of a much bigger problem that needs to be addressed. Thoughts? A lot of people seek therapy when they start to feel like they're out of alignment because the things that they're doing, like the typical things that they're doing to address the difficulties in their day to day, aren't working. And so the things that normally work, like getting back to maybe eating differently or doing some physical movement or doing your journaling practice that you kind of left out for a couple of weeks, those things aren't quite touching and making you feel an improvement in your overall sense of wellness. So often people will reach out because the alignment thing is becoming a bigger concern for them.
I think kind of seeing the delineation between those two, like kind of
Yeah,
written out like that too, is like, you may be feeling whatever it is you're feeling, but you're like, I don't know how the frick to describe this thing that I'm feeling. And like,
right.
this kind of like helps you zone in on like, okay, yeah, I went to bed. I feel way better like now that I've napped, or whatever. I was just
Sure.
tired. Or like, you know, like, yeah, like I like the depleted from output versus the conflict. Um,
Yeah.
because sometimes you don't think about it at that next layer. You're just like,
Mhm.
I'm spent. It's just like at that level. And then like, but you just got to kind of think, I think thinking down one more level of detail is like, okay, was it just because I was cleaning the yard all day and I'm just like, my body is super tired and
Yeah.
then I ate, I took a shower, I slept and I feel fine the next morning? Or
Yeah.
is it like something else, like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's
Thank
really,
you. Yeah.
yeah, it's just such an interesting conversation. This often is like kind of a set of questions that I use when people come to therapy. One, we ask kind of what the presenting thing is or why you're driven to come to therapy in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times this is what's happening in my brain is I'm trying to determine if someone's just tired and they just need like a little kind of reset, or if someone really is experiencing like pre-burnout and their values are getting shoved to the side. They don't want to do the things that they're having such a hard time
Mm-hmm.
showing up for themselves or the people that love them and care for them. Other people are asking them like, what's going on with you? Is everything okay? Those are really the times where I say, like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about your kind of basic needs. Because we always start with, how are you sleeping? When was last time you had a physical or a medical checkup? How are you eating? What kind of physical movement are you getting? XYZ. And from there, we start to have conversations around, okay, so what can we do with those things to start to improve your overall outlook? Or is this a none of those things are working and we need to start with one and we need to get, like, I would always try to access good sleep first. Sleep is like the universe's natural restorer, right? If you get a week straight of really good sleep, your outlook is almost guaranteed to be improved based on, 8 days before. Eating is also a big one. I think it's difficult in like today's day and age because unless you're like literally growing the food in your backyard that you're eating, it's tough to eat like a super, super clean, really good diet. That's obviously my opinion, but in my experience, that's just kind of tricky. And then we have the physical movement. If you aren't moving your body in some way, if you're not like walking the dogs, maybe you take a walk after dinner. If you're not, putting your face in the sunshine, although not today, you know, a couple of times a day just to sort of breathe in some of that good air and get a little vitamin D. These are vitamins and minerals that our body needs to be at its best. And so you can't be at your best if you're inside 24/7, you're having terrible sleep, you're waking up tired every single day, and you're not moving anything in your brain or your physical self. That really will send you into misalignment faster than anything else. And then you add all the responsibilities of your life, you know? Then you add the emotional stuff and the mental health stuff, and it's like, holy shit, so much work to do. So, um, okay, so knowing that and having that kind of side by side, here's some of the patterns that people typically fall into as high achievers. I don't know that every single person in the world falls into one of these three, but you do fall into some semblance of one of these three. So, anything stick out for any of you? Automatically, you're like, yep, I'm the.
Or kind of a combo of some of them.
Ooh, Alan likes a mix.
Yeah.
Also, these descriptions are not intended to be all encompassing. Like the performer equating rest with weakness, not every performer feels like rest is weakness. Sometimes they just feel like, I got to show up because this is what I got to do. My worth is tied to the things that I do in my community.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a combo as well.
Do you?
Yeah.
Are you comfortable sharing the combination?
Honestly, like all three. Like I
Oh,
can like take bits and pieces from everything. I think I like to be in control from like childhood trauma. And then the performer, like I always like to be, on top and outperforming myself and other people. And
Yeah.
then the fixer, I like to fix other people's problems and take on and be the yes person. So um,
Yeah. Lexi, not to call you out or even just give you a
call me
challenge that
out.
you're not.
Call me
Well,
out. Yeah, you're
I
good.
don't want to give you a challenge that
Yeah.
you're not inviting. So I'm doing this a little preemptively, but I would challenge you to look at these three
Mhm.
and find the one that most accurately depicts your default.
Mhm.
Because your default will likely have pieces of the other ones, but at the very core, the thing that you do is rooted in one of these. Like I'm all of these things too. I think we all are.
It's
But at
definitely
my
the
very
controller.
okay.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
That's like the dominant one.
Yeah. Like I live in the fixer. I'm with Shanna. Like that is literally my baseline. And you can see the fixer when out of control looks for control, right? So then sort of the controller piece kind of starts to like band-aid in a little bit like, okay, if I can just find something I can control or something I can fix, I'll be okay. But the reason I challenge you on that is the warning sign, it for me is almost always resentment. And I don't know why I'm feeling resentful. I don't even know who or what caused it, but 100% I start to feel sassy about something. I'm like, well, blah, 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 blah. And it's usually Tommy who gets the brunt of it, unfortunately, but he did sign on to be married to me. So that's just the way it goes. But um, Chad, same for you, right? If you feel like fixer and performer, I think some of it may be your role at KW, right? Because you have to pull from both of these things, right?
What's interesting is the performer is, I think, is how I grew up. I came from
Yeah.
like a Japanese household where my grandparents were and their parents were plantation workers making 2 cents a day and this kind of thing. And so my grandfather and grandmother were such hard workers and they kind of instilled it in me. And I've always been that way. Like even as
Hmm.
a high school kid on weekends and what have you, on holidays, I'd still wake up at 4 in the morning to go run and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But in the professional setting, then I think it started to move into not away from the performer and into the fixer, but I literally I see both show up on a regular basis. So yeah,
Yeah.
the controller, not at all.
Yeah. Except that you do have high standards because,
Certainly, but some of the other things, like for instance,
yeah.
uncertainty is a trigger. Is it my biggest? Not really. When I'm stressed, which most of my team has seen me stressed, I don't micromanage. I actually delegate more. You know,
Yeah.
so Shannon can speak to that. Like we're working with some operational things, and I probably less micromanage and more collaborate to go. What do you think? Like, what do you know what I mean? That sort
And
of
I'm the
thing.
fixer,
So
Yeah.
Chad. So it kind of works, right?
perfect.
Good
It,
partnership.
yeah, and I think like for me, like controller, I think I'm more in the controller bucket because and the thing that kind of bounced, that kind of I focused in on is the uncertainty is like my biggest trigger. And I was just
Hmm.
recalling a conversation yesterday I was having with someone. They were using very like more vague words about like, well, they did this and this, and like when you say they, who?
Yeah.
Like that kind of, I want to get rid of the ambiguity.
Right.
Yeah.
Alan, you do love a really clear, concise communication. Like you
Yeah.
like to know exactly what is expected of you.
Yeah.
And tell people exactly what you expect to. You don't really have shyness about that, in my experience with you anyway.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it is what it is,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Well, and you will work really well with the performer. The key is that when the two of you work together, you're clear about who's expected to do what and when it's expected to be completed.
Yeah.
So if you put the two of you together, it should work out great.
Yeah. Because I mean, like in the past, I think I have shared, like when I looked at the performer and I read that paragraph, I'm like, oh, that is so not me. because I
Yeah.
have shared like I'm absolutely happy lying in bed staring at my fan
Yes.
spinning. Rest,
I picture
I
that more than I should probably. I actually have used it as um a a coping challenge. But like, have
Oh
you
wow.
tried laying on your bed and staring at the ceiling fan for 2 minutes? Like set a timer for 2 minutes and just stare. And they're like, what? 2 minutes? Like I got stuff to do. And I'm like,
It's a
okay, well,
miracle.
I know.
Yeah.
And I think too, Alan, the equating rest with weakness, your worth tied to your output, that is an age thing as well. I think,
Hmm.
you and I have shared some of the similarities about as we
Yeah.
age, we become a lot less inclined to do things because other people think we should, or do things because other people have unrealistic expectations of what our output's going to be. Um, so I can see that for sure, just from what you've shared about your life as we've gotten to know each other.
Hmm.
Um, Shanna, the
And I think like
fix.
I
Oh, go
recall
ahead.
like the challenge for me, like maybe it's been 20 years now that I remember making the conscious decision to stop setting an alarm. I'm gonna
Yeah.
wake up whenever I wake up, and that took a little bit of effort,
Mhm.
and
Sure.
then you know I maybe set an alarm like 5 times a year,
Oh,
or at
yeah.
least like that kind of thing. And I feel like I don't know if that has had a direct impact on how things are, but I know when I go to bed is like one, it's been enough years that I'm gonna wake up, hopefully, and there's
Right.
gonna be enough time to do the stuff that I need to do before like whatever my first thing is. And then I
Yeah.
also like consciously, it's like I'm not gonna agree to do something like super early if that's like in that zone of maybe I won't wake up to do that,
Right.
you know. And I feel like I've never ever had pushback from others. It's like, oh yeah, let's
Hmm.
do that at 10. They're like, okay, sure. You know.
Yeah. I don't
So
know
I
if
yeah.
you understand or grasp how psychologically healthy that decision was 20 years ago. Because here's what happens in the layers of our psychological self. When you make a decision to let your body wake you up naturally, and you actually have the discipline of letting that happen, like letting that become a pattern, you teach your brain that it doesn't need to panic and it doesn't need to be fearful that
Mm.
it isn't going to wake up. And Alan, ever since I've been self employed, I very rarely set an alarm. Sometimes it's for an F1 race that's like in some random place and it's at 3 a.m. and I have to watch it because it's a decision making race, or, a flight at
Yeah.
6 a.m. I
Hmm.
want to make sure
Hmm.
I'm up by 3:30 or whatever. But psychologically, what happened when you made that decision and you stuck with that intention was your brain stopped being fearful that it wasn't going to do what it needed to do in order to show up for what you
Yeah.
needed to show up for. So it's very psychologically healthy. And I'm
Yeah.
glad you did that.
Yeah. And thank you for kind of saying it that way, the way you did, because it kind of flashed me back to, I felt there were more episodes, like when I was an alarm setter, that like if I just kind of woke up on my own, there was like an initial like anxiety layer of like, oh shit, I overslept, you know?
Yep.
And then like, but I really hadn't. I just like woke up earlier than my alarm. And then I was like pissed because I'm like, frick, I got gypped out of, like whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's important for us to remember that our nervous system is on all the time.
Mm.
Whether or not it's adequately regulated or not adequately regulated is up to circumstance and environment, right? If you set yourself up for having a pattern like that where you allow your body to wake up. And I mean, I like you, I wake up between 5:30 and 6 most days. I will have a coffee, I'll go to the gym, whatever. And, I can't think of a time I've slept past 6:30 in the last 5 years. And so I think it's important for us to remember that our body does pay attention, right? It really does. It wants to do what's best for us, but it also wants to it wants to be healing as well. And so I think if you can continue to remind yourself that your psychological system is alive and well, and you can look for those healthy things that you've done, it'll be good for you overall.
And kind of the nice thing is like I really don't give it any conscious thought.
Right.
Like it is what it is, so.
Yep. Does anyone else do that? Oh, you want to say hi to Ahsoka, Chad?
I love her. She's absolutely beautiful, by the way.
Thank
No, I was
you.
going to add something. I was going to add on to Alan's thing, which is really funny from my own brain is I am like Alan, whereby I don't like to use alarms. Like the thought of using an alarm in the morning gives me anxiety for whatever reason. That's where our commonality completely comes to a stop because my brain is such now where I wake up every morning I have to wake up without an alarm, but the alarm is my brain. Like I literally wake up at the same minute every single morning. And if when I say same minute, I don't mean thereabouts. I mean like literally I wake up at the same minute every single morning. And if I overslept that minute, I'm real tough on myself. So the next day I'm able to move that. I don't know how it happens, but it's to the minute. It's weird.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean,
The only time I set an
there's
alarm
some
is if
things
I'm
we could think
traveling.
about.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, because if you think
Yeah.
about it in the same way, you have the same psychological layers, right? That it's actually just as possible that your body is waking up because it's used to doing that, or that it's waking up because it knows it'll panic if it doesn't, right? So it could be an anxiety response just as easily as it could be like a regulatory
Totally.
response. And you won't know that
The
unless you, I don't know, do a sleep study, things like that. So,
Now you got to just
the
stop looking at the clock in general when you
right.
wake up and just be like, I'm up.
Yeah.
no, I
Going
don't
on
look
with
at
my
the
day.
clock.
Yeah.
It's not that. I'm not lying in bed looking at it by any means. I'm
No,
out
like
sleeping and then I
when you
just
wake up, just to notice like that you're
oh
waking
got
up at
it.
the same time. Like don't even
Yeah,
look
oh
at
my
it.
God, that gave me I think I sweat. I actually started getting
He
that's
started
so
sweating
funny.
when you said
Yeah,
that.
like,
When you
yeah.
said that, I was like, oh my God, wait, what are you talking about? Like just
Yeah.
free ball the clock,
Yes,
commando the
exactly. Yeah.
time in the morning.
Yep.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
What's fun? No, what's funny is like Alan is like Alan. I've said this a few times before. Is my spirit animal. Like his. If you walk up to my bucket, oh fucks, there's so many in there. Alan is like, I'm sorry, we're all out for the day. We
Oh.
ran out 20 something years ago. We're all good. And so like while he doesn't use an alarm because he doesn't want the anxiety of it, I go, yeah, I don't want but he said I don't want the anxiety of it too. But then also please add anxiety that my brain will automatically go off regardless of the alarm. So it's a whole different
Yeah.
thing.
Well, and so Lexi doesn't feel left out. Chad, the challenge that I would give you, kind of in conjunction with what she said, is you could start to notice how you feel when you wake up and just take that like 15 to 30 seconds of, okay, I feel rested and I'm ready for my day. Or maybe you have a feeling of, I know, are you still sweating? Sorry, I don't mean to make you sweat further, but yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us in this kind of current day and age don't stop and notice how we feel about things. Um, the other day, I did actually boundaries training with an agency, and I've worked at this agency for like 15 years, and I was really nervous. And I had to sit in my chair and be like, okay, these people, like I know these people, I've worked intimately with these people for a long time. Like, where is my nervousness coming from? And it was a performance thing, right? Like I wanted to meet them exactly where they needed to be in terms of the topic. I wanted the content to be relevant. I wanted them to feel like they got what they paid for, or however you want to frame it. Like I felt like I was having that kind of performance anxiety of like, am I showing up how they need me to? And then I realized the reason they hire me is because they want me to show up as me, not show up as some version of, myself. So I will send these slides to Jewel so that you guys can use these questions to kind of think about, ongoing where you are in whatever it is that you're experiencing. But starting to get to know yourself is setting an intention to actually look at look at these questions for 5 minutes a day. Like, where do I feel stress? Where does it start? What are my kind of initial trigger points? Or where do I start to feel like I am exhibiting a behavior that I'm not used to? Am I tired or am I out of values alignment? You guys talked a lot about what pattern is yours. And then lastly, like, what's the thing that you're not admitting to yourself? Like, I am overworked, or I do need to take a break, or I am trying too hard, or I am anxious about this thing that I don't need to be anxious about. And really starting to identify, you know, how am I going to address that? Like, what's the way that I'm going to pay attention and maybe take some sort of action around it? I think that's kind of, I just sort of went through this, but like, if you do want to engage this practice, the simplest way for you to do it is to schedule like 2 minutes a couple of times a day. The first is when you wake up, how do I feel? Am I anxious? Am I excited? Where's my energy? In the middle of the day, I kid you not, I don't know why we got rid of lunch breaks because most people don't take them anymore. But like, am I running at top speed? Am I relaxing? Am I taking a break? Just, type a text to yourself, put it in a note. And then at night, like before you go to bed, how was my day? What went really well for me? I know you guys do this in KW under kind of different veils, but like, we don't start to notice patterns unless we give ourselves the time to start to pay attention to what patterns we're falling into. And then my favorite is when you meet with your mental health professional, you get to tell them, look, I have all this data. Like, look at these things I'm noticing. How am I going to change this? How am I going to shift this? Like, what am I going to do differently so that I can avoid the burnout part? Hey, friends, there's my contact information. I think all of you already know this, but if you need me, please email me. I'm always happy to help and, give you guys the space and time that you need. I am sad that I didn't get to sit like in the energy of the room with all of you today, but I'll take the Hollywood Squares. It seems like it worked out okay.
You got to
Thank
bring
you.
the
I think that
dog
was
next
great.
time.
Oh, so I got to tell you, Lexi, I did a little experiment and I brought her with me to one agency. She lost her mind. She
Oh,
was all over the place. And I mean, she was a puppy, right? Like she was jumping on people and things like that. I think I will bring her to Kapolei because the room is a little bit more contained, or town because I guess we can shut those doors. But I think I need to do like a 10-minute walk around. Like when I get her out of the car, maybe like let her sniff outside, maybe let her come in and, move around a little bit. And then she'll actually just fall asleep while we're all talking.
let her chill.
Yeah, but I will bring her. She's very lovely.
So beautiful.
Thanks. Thank you. Any thoughts or questions before we say
Thank
goodbye?
you.
Of course. Thank you for the conversation.
Good to see you all. Dean, never see you long time. Good to see you.
Hey, Alan, thank you for letting me listen in, Heather, and let me audit this class.
Yeah.
Passive
Anytime.
participation. Yep.
I love it. No, I mean, everybody needs something different, right? Like sometimes the listening part is the seed planting. And you don't have to, I mean, nobody's forced to have any conversation. Like your experience is your experience. So I'll still show
And
up regardless.
I did put some things in the chat, but I didn't realize
Oh.
I actually was direct messaging Jewel on accident. So like, damn it. But I'll jump on next week and I can see the value if I had actually actively participated. So
sure.
Thank you. It
Well,
did
your
provide
presence
value.
is participation enough. But yeah, we will be on Zoom or in the Kapolei office next month as of right now. So we'll talk about boundaries and we'll see you then.
Bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Thanks,
Stay dry.
guys.
Stay safe.
Yep,
Stay dry.